Hi players, bonjour from Paris, my name is Asaf and welcome to my channel Easy Board Games. Today we're going to have an explanatory playthrough for Vampire Lords that was designed by Weronika and Maciej Galas. Before getting started, I just wanted to tell you that this is a sponsored content and also this is a prototype, so components and some of the rules are still a subject for a change. Ready to see how it goes? Let's get to it. Alright guys, so let's start by talking about everything that we can see right now on your screen, starting of course with the main board. And as you can see, this is a setup for 3 players, and the initial setup depends on the number of players that you're playing. So the setup for 3 players is of course going to be different from 2 or 4 players, just for the example. Now some of the changes that you should pay attention to is, for example, that some of the towns are going to be replaced with actually village tokens, so just like I did over here. Now on the board itself, each player is going to start with 3 living units and also 3 undead units, and we have this marker to indicate to which army these units belong. On top of that, we have the ancestral castle, and also we have the vampire lord that is going to start in the same wilderness region as the ancestral castle. Next to it, we have also one of the towns that are going to start in the control of that player. So we do have names for the different vampire lords, but just to make it easier, I'm going to call them by the color, so green, purple, and blue. Also, we have the round marker, it's this cloud over here, that is going to start at the bottom part of the board. To the left and to the right of the board, we have also something that is called a spawn vampire. Those are going to be added to us at a later point of the game. Don't worry, we'll get to it a little bit later. And in general, this is what we have on the main board. Of course, we have also the courts that are printed on the board. To the right side of the board, we can see a few elements as well, starting with the blood tokens, gold pieces, also some living units, undead units, unrest, and also neutral living units. To the bottom of the board, we have the market, and this is just one of the ways you can set up the market. I think that in the rulebook there is a more comfortable way, but just for the purpose of the video, I decided to place it like this. So in general, we need to separate the cards into a few types. Here in the market, we have 3 types of cards. First of all, we have the action cards. Those are the cards with this red frame. And also on the other part of the market, we have combat cards and also cards that are called the Sultan's Support. So we have here a few cards that are from the same type. Now during setup, after we set up the market, we're going to take the top card from the action deck and we're going to place it face up in the graveyard. On the other side of the board, we have the 2 combat dice. We have here a player 8 that most likely I'm going to use it in this explanatory playthrough. And with that, let's move on to talk about the setup of the players themselves. So from the 3 players, I've chosen Vlad Dracul in order to demonstrate the setup, and each player is going to take 3 blood, 3 gold, and also we have a few components. So this is the army marker, again to show to which army the units over there belong to. Next to it, we have the town markers, and also we have some player markers. Usually those are going to be used in order to show if a player is controlling a certain village, just like we have over here on the main board. So this village belongs to Vlad Dracul, the blue player, the purple player, and the green player. Also, we have 4 Lord ability cards. Those are 4 cards that belong to a specific vampire lord. So this is part of the things that are going to contribute to the asymmetrical aspect in this game. And we have a few cards that we're starting with. Now, 4 basic cards are going to be actually dealt to each player. Those are universal cards, if you will. As you can see, their value is 0. And the 4 cards are Raid, Bypass, Crypt Keeper, and also Bat's Swarm. On top of that, each vampire lord is going to have their own cards, and those are unique again to that vampire lord. As you can see at the bottom of the card, we can see the name of that vampire lord. So at the beginning of the game, as part of setup, each player is going to take those 6 cards and they're going to shuffle them and place them to the left of the player board in order to create their own personal draw deck. The first player is chosen by two ways. Either it's going to be the last player that drank something red, or you can just roll one of the dice and the player that has the highest result is going to be the first player. I have randomly chosen that the purple player, Elizabeth, is going to be the first player, and this is why they're going to have this red crown that is the first player marker. In Vampire Lord, the backstory is that in the 15th century in Romania, a land ravaged by war, threatened by the Ottoman invasion, and torn apart by feud of noble families, as the flames of war engulf the realm, vampires emerge from the shadows ready to claim dominion over the world of mortals. Now, the map itself is basically built from territories from Moldova, Romania, and also the southern parts of Ukraine. And in this game, we're going to play up to 4 rounds. Those are the different moon phases that you can see around the board. And in each round, we're going to have a few phases. The first phase is the diplomacy that also has a few steps in it, like forming alliances, but only if you're playing at 4 players or more. So since this is a 3-player explanatory playthrough, I'm going to talk about the alliance in a different segment at the end of the video. The second part of diplomacy is the evolving abilities, where each player is going to choose and activate one of its Vampire Lord ability cards. And then we're going to have the Vampire movement, where basically we're going to take our Vampire Lord and we're going to place it in one of the wilderness areas on the board. The second phase is the action phase, that is of course the meat and bones of Vampire Lords. First we're going to draw cards into our hand, and that depends on the hand limit of that round. We're going to start with 4 cards, then 5, 6, and go down to 5 again. And then each player in their turn is going to play 1 card and execute one of the actions that we're going to see in just a few more moments. After all players have passed, we'll have the market phase, where the first player that passed, besides the first player of that turn, is going to start purchasing cards from the market. After they finished, the next player will buy cards, and so on. The fourth phase is the harvest and upkeep, where we're going to take some resources and then pay the upkeep of our army. And the fifth and last phase is the dawn, where we're going to have something that is called unrest escalation, and we're going to check the victory conditions. After that, if no player has won, we're going to move on to the next round, and so on. The victory condition in Vampire Lords is if at the time when we're going to check the victory condition, one player is holding 5 towns, and pay attention that there is a difference between a town and a village, we'll get to that, then that player has won. If at the end of the 4th round, no player has managed to achieve a hold over 5 towns, then the player that has the most towns is going to win the game. If we have a tie, then the player that is controlling the most villages. If again we have a tie, then the player that has the most units. And if again we're going to have a tie, then players are simply going to share their victory. Pay attention that in this game there is no player elimination. So with that, you guys, I think that we can almost dive into the game. I just want to first of all break down into details what do we have here on the map and what are the names of the different things that we have. So the map itself is being built by a few things. First of all, as I said before, we have the ancestral castle. This is where nobody can actually go into it besides your specific army. So this is kind of your safe haven. Then we have towns. Those are these kind of locations, as you can see, that have a little bit red in them and they look a little bit more developed. Also, we have villages, the smaller places, but in general, towns and villages are considered to be something that is called locale. Between these locales, we have roads. This is where mainly the army is going to move through. I'm saying mainly because, as you can see right now, we have armies in the ancestral castle. And also we have these areas that are called wilderness. Those are the areas that are being held between those roads. Now, besides your ancestral castle that is placed in this wilderness, armies cannot go into this wilderness space. Only your vampires will be able to be situated there, but don't worry, we're going to cover it as well. And as I've said before, we also have the 4 courts, which correspond to one of the actions that our vampires will be able to take. Okay, so I think we talked enough, and let's dive in actually to the first phase of the game, that is the diplomacy. As I've said before, we don't have forming alliances just because this is a 3-player game. So we're moving on to the second part of diplomacy, and that is evolving abilities. So guys, as you probably already know by now, I'm not here to give you any kind of strategy advice. I'm just here to show you how the game works. So I'm not going to really go into strategy or something like that. Let's just see how we play this game. So now that we're in the evolving abilities step, we're going to take one of the 4 cards of the evolving abilities, and we're going to choose one to immediately activate. So let's just take an example. Elizabeth, the purple player, is going to activate a card that is called Bloodbath. We have some flavor text, and then we can see on the card when is this card going to come into effect. Here it says that at the start of the battle, and then we have the effect itself. So what we're going to do is simply place it over here, and in general each round we're going to do the same, but you already paid attention that we have here only 3 places for these evolving abilities, and we have 4 cards. We can have maximum of 3 abilities that are active. So if at the 4th round Elizabeth would like to activate the 4th card, she will just need to discard one of the other cards. With your permission, off camera, I'm going to do the same thing for the other players. The next step is the vampire movement. So again, without going too much into strategy, let's just do something that is a little bit random. We're going to take the first player, vampire, and we're going to place it over here. Then the next player clockwise is also going to move, let's say, over here. And the next player is actually going to stay exactly where they are. Now that we finish the diplomacy phase, we're going to move on to the action phase. So basically each player is going to draw up to their hand limit, okay? Maybe they have some cards from the previous round. Obviously, this is the first round, so we're going to draw 4 cards. This is what we have here with the first round. So now we're going to move on to the next step, which is to start playing cards. So let's start with how we're actually going to play a card. We can play a card either to the symbol that we can see at the top left corner of the card, or we can play a card and perform what we can see in the red frame. So let's take the first example. Elizabeth is going to play Bat Swarm, but she's going to play this card in order to perform the army symbol that we can see over here. And we have 2 options. Either you can play this symbol in order to do recruitment, that means to add 3 living units to your ancestral castle, or you can perform a march, and that means that you're going to move your army by up to 3 locales. So let's start with the basics. Elizabeth is going to recruit 3 living units into her ancestral castle. So we're going to take the units from the supply. We have 1, 2, and 3, and we're simply going to add it to this tower of units in her ancestral castle. Now, in general, it's important for you to know that the amount of units that we have in the supply is limited. So if we don't have units anymore in the supply, obviously we cannot recruit. That was the first action of Elizabeth. That means that she's going to take this card and place it in the discard pile. Let's move on to the next player in turn. That is going to be the blue player, Vlad Dracul. So let's see what they're going to do. Vlad Dracul is going to play a card that is called Raid. And also they're going to play to the army symbol, but this time they're going to do a march. So as I've said before, when you're performing a march, you can move up to 3 locales. Now you're starting, of course, in your ancestral castle. So that means that you're going to be adjacent to everything that we have around that wilderness area. So with one step, I can move to the town that I already control, or I can move to either one of the villages that we can see around it. Now, if you're moving to a locale, again, a town or a village that you already control, after that you can move again another step, and again, of course, if you control it, up to 3 times. But your movement is going to be stopped by one of the 3 possibilities. Either you've moved to a locale that is neutral, that's the first option, or you moved into one of the other players' locale that has units in it, or you actually moved into a town of one of the other players, and even if it's empty, you're still going to stop there. Later, I'm going to explain to you why. Now, during your movement, you will be able to drop off and also pick up units from the different points where you're performing the movement. So let's see actually an example. Let's say that the army is going to move one step over here. We're controlling this locale. Then I'm going to leave here one living unit and one dead unit. So now we're going to take another army marker and we're going to place it on top of it. So we know that we have here an army that belongs to the blue player. And the second movement is going to move into this village. Now, because this is a neutral village, our movement is going to stop and we're going to have a combat immediately. Now, every time that you're moving into a neutral locale, if it doesn't have units already, we're always going to fight against 3 neutral living units. It's important that I'm saying living because different cards can have different effects either on the living or on the undead. So for make it a little bit simpler, let's place these 3 neutral units over here and let's see how combat actually works. Now, when we're having combat, first of all, the attacker will be able to choose if they want to play a combat card or not. A combat card is a card that has this symbol of these crossed swords. When the attacker is playing the combat card, we're going to resolve that effect immediately. Then if we have combat against another player, then the defender will be able to play their combat card and also resolve that effect immediately. Now guys, we have really a lot of effects and a lot of things that we'll be able to do. I'm not going to explain, of course, everything. So let's take this card, for example. That is the combat card that the blue player decided to play. That is called Masquerade. So on the effect, we can see that perform a combat ability of the chosen card from the market. That means that right now we have the possibility to choose one of the combat cards that we have in the market and actually perform that specific effect. In our case, we're going to take this card that is called Ambush. So on the card it says that we're going to take down one unit from the opponent's army, and pay attention that with this iconography, it doesn't matter if it's a living unit or an undead unit, and after that take 3 gold or 3 blood. Alright, so that's pretty easy. Let's take one of the units outside. So we already have here 2. And on top of that, we're going to decide to take 3 gold. So we're going to take this 3 gold and we're going to place it in the supply of the blue player. Now, the last effect that we have on every combat card is actually to draw one more card. So don't be afraid to play your combat cards because that is actually going to give you the possibility to recycle and see more cards from your deck. So this card we're going to place over here in the discard pile, but the blue player is immediately going to take another card and draw it into their hand. After we did that, let's move on to the next step, and that is to roll the battle dice and loss allocation. So we have here 2 dice. The player that has more undead units is going to roll the black die, and the other player is going to roll the beige die. Now pay attention that the black die is considered to be stronger. We have better values on it. If we have a tie between the players, then the attacker is going to roll the black die. Obviously, we have over here with this army 2 undead units. With neutral army, we never have undead units. So it's going to be the blue player that is going to roll the black die. It's going to make more sense when you're going to have a combat against another player. So now we can take both of the dice, we're going to roll them, and we have over here 2, and here we have 0. That is basically the number of losses that each army will need to sustain, of course, to the other player or opponent. So in our case, it basically means that the neutral army is going to take 2 losses, so 1 and 2, and the blue player's army is going to take 0 losses. Alright, not so bad at all. Now we need to understand who is the winner. So each unit, doesn't matter if it's a living or undead, is going to count as 1. Over here we have 4 units, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the strength right now is 4. And on top of that, we have a vampire lord that is in the wilderness adjacent to where the fight has happened. So that is going to give 2 more power to that army. Later, when we're going to unblock our vampire spawns, each spawn is going to give 1 to that strength. And also it's important to say that you cannot combine vampires, so here it's not going to be 3, you're just going to choose obviously the one that is stronger, the vampire lord. So in total, we have 4 plus 2, that is 6, and we compared basically to 0, so that means that the blue player has won this combat. Pay attention that when you're attacking a town, that town is going to have +1 to that strength when they're defending. You can see it with the iconography in the middle of the town. So since we just managed to win this combat, great, we took control over the village. We're going to take one of the player markers and we're going to place it next to that village to indicate that right now we're controlling it. With that, we have finished the action of the blue player and we're going to move on to the green player. The next option that we have when we're playing an action card is to play it with the bat symbol. So that is going to be a different effect. Let's talk about it. With this vampire's activation, we have 3 possibilities. The first one is to subdue a village. That means that we're going to take one of our vampires. It doesn't have to be our vampire lord. Of course, this is the first round, so we have only our vampire lord. And we're going to place it in any wilderness that we would like in order to take over an adjacent neutral village with no units in it. So that means that I'll be able to take my vampire, let's say that I moved it over here, even though it doesn't make so much difference, and I will be able to subdue this village, for example. That means that I'm going to take this token and place it next to it. So now I'm going to control it, and of course I didn't need to fight over it like we had with the blue player. Another option that we have, so let's take it back to how it was, is to do something that is called hunt. We're going to again take one of our vampires, place it in any wilderness, and then we're going to take 2 blood and we're going to place an unrest marker in one adjacent locale. So let's see how does it work. Let's take our vampire, and this is actually the action that the green player is going to take. Let's place it over here. And here we're going to place an unrest marker on a village that the blue player is controlling. Now, let's talk a little bit about unrest. First of all, this card can go to the discard pile of the green player. And in general, if I'm going to place an unrest token in a neutral locale, we're actually not going to leave that unrest marker. Actually, it's going to be converted immediately into a neutral unit. Now, the next time where an army is going to come over here, that means that they will need to fight not only this neutral unit, but also the regular 3 that we would have had if this village was empty. So in total, it would have been 4 neutral units. Now, a way to take out this unrest, if at the end of the turn of that player that controls that locale where we have the unrest, if they have their 1 unit, if it's a village, that means that the soldiers, let's say, manage to take out the unrest of the people, so this token is going to go out. But if it's inside a town, then they will need there at least 2 units at the end of their turn in order to take out this unrest. Now, the third option that we have with the vampire's activation is called travel to court. That means to go to one of the courts that we have around the board and execute whatever we can see over there. Now that we finished the turn of the green player, we're going to go back to the purple player's turn. Now, by now, we basically covered all the universal actions that we can take in general, according to if we're playing a card for the army activation or for the vampire activation. Now, the rest of the stuff that we have is basically the different effects that we have in the red frame. As I've said before, I'm not going to cover everything, but let's at least enjoy with the rest of the round. The purple player is going to play a card that is called Crypt Keeper, and they're going to play it for the effect that we have in the red frame. Here the effect says to bury one of the cards that we have from our discard pile in the graveyard. What does it mean? Basically, we're just going to take one of the cards that we have from the discard pile and we're going to take it out from our deck and place it in the graveyard. So yes, since this is a deck builder, you guessed correctly, and this is the main way that we have to get rid of weaker cards that we have in our deck or cards that just don't align with our strategy. But here we have another cool effect, so I would like to show it to you. The only card that we have right now in our discard pile is the Bat Swarm that we played last round. Now, sometimes you're going to have an effect that you can see here in the black frame with this kind of coffin, that when you're burying this card, again taking it from the discard pile and placing it in the graveyard, you will be able to execute this effect. So now what is going to happen is that this card again is going to go to the graveyard, but for that we're going to take 3 blood into our own possession. And after that, this card is going to go into their discard pile. Moving on to the blue player, the next card they would like to play is called Local Guide. This is a card that only Vlad Dracula has. And here the effect says move up to 5 of your units, doesn't matter living or undead, to 1 locale at the same wilderness. So this is pretty interesting. So what we're going to do is to take up to 5 units from this army, for the example, to another locale that is in the same wilderness. So we're going to take this wilderness as an example, and we're going to actually move all of the units that we have 4 units, directly into this town. So let's see another example of combat. So now we remember that we're going to fight here, first of all, 3 neutral living units, right? And we need to remember that this town has +1 to their strength, right? Just like we've talked about before. So the blue player right now does not want to play a combat card. Let's take this card and already discard it. And of course, the blue player is the one that is going to roll the black dice. So let's see what we're going to have. We have 1 and 1. So that means that 1 is going to be taken from here. And also now the blue player needs to decide which unit they would like to take out. I think just for the fun of it, let's take out 1 undead. And now we're going to calculate the strength. So we have 2 +1 for the neutral army to the total of 3. And we have here 3 units for the blue player. Don't forget, of course, that we do have the Vampire Lord in an adjacent wilderness, so that is going to give them +2, 5 against 3. Of course, the blue player has 1, but in general, if you have a tie between the armies, then the defender is the one that is going to win. So in our case, again, the blue player has 1. We're going to take now 1 of the town markers and we're going to place it over here. And now the defeated army needs to retreat. Now they need to retreat to an adjacent neutral locale. If they have the possibility to retreat into a town, this is going to be their preference. But since here we can see that we are surrounded only by neutral villages, then the player can decide where they're going to retreat. So these 2 units are going to retreat into, let's say, over here to this village. And it means that the next time an army is going to move into this village, they will need to deal with 5 neutral units. Finishing with that, we're going to move on to the green player that is deciding to play a card that is called Raid. Of course, they're going to play it for the red frame. So here it says +1 unrest in 2 different locales and also gain 3 gold or 3 blood. I think what they're going to do is something pretty interesting. This is where they're going to place their first unrest. So we already have here 2. And also they're going to take 1 unrest and they're going to place it in this locale. On top of that, they're going to take 3 gold into their possession. Finished with the action, this card is going to go on to the discard pile of the green player, and we're going to move on back to the purple player. The purple player is going to play a card that is called Disguised as the Inquisition for the red frame, of course. And here we have another cool effect. Perform red box text of one of the cards from the market and then move it to the bottom of the market deck right over here. Okay, so let's get rid of this card already, place it in the discard pile of the purple player, and let's choose one of the cards to play here. So I think the purple player is going to take this card that is called Mining Rights. It says, first of all, take 2 gold. Don't mind if I do. Gold is always appreciated. And on top of that, perform 1 army activation. Okay, so this card can immediately go to the bottom of the market pile, and every time that we're going to take a card from the market, immediately we're going to replenish it with another one. So now that we need to take an army activation, we're going to do something, I think it's going to be pretty cool. We're going to move all of this army, and again, because we're situated in our ancestral castle and it's in the wilderness, again, we are adjacent to everything that we have around it. We're going to perform, this is the first movement. We're going to leave here 2 units, let's mark it with one of our markers, and we're going to perform another movement, and I think we're going to go to this village over here. here, and that is going to immediately trigger a combat just like we've seen before. Let's resolve it quickly. No combat cards are going to be played by the purple player, but I do want to draw your attention to the ability card of the purple player. This one is called Bloodbath, and at the start of the battle, if you're going to pay 2 blood, you can take out 1 unit from your opponent's army. Okay, so I think that the purple player is going to pay 2 blood. Let's put it back in the general supply. And that means that we can take out 1 neutral unit already. Now let's roll the dice, see what's going to happen. So 2 and 2. That means that these 2 units are going to go to the supply. And the purple player needs to decide for 2 units that they're going to get rid of. So we're going to take 2 living units. Again, place it back in the supply. And now that we have won the combat, we're going to take one of our markers and we're going to place it over here. Now, before we're finishing our turn, we know that we have in this town an army of at least 2 units, and that means that we can take this unrest token and get rid of it. Okay, not a bad turn for the purple player. Let's move on to the blue player. The blue player is going to play a card that is called Bat Swarm, and here it says -2 living units from any locale. I think they're going to be a little bit cruel to the green player, and here we have 3 living units, so 2 of those they're going to get rid of. The green player now is like, all right, this is on. So let's take this card and put it in the discard pile of the blue player. Moving on to the green player, they're going to play this card for the vampire activation. So now they're going to show you how we're actually going to one of the courts. So let's travel to a court. I think that what we're going to do is to travel to this court that is called Vampire Elders, and that will allow us to recruit 3 undead units to a locale that we control. So I think that these 3 units we're going to place here, right? This is a locale that we control. Okay, let's take this card, place it in the discard pile. And now we're going to go to the last action of each player. Let's see how does it go. The purple player is going to play this card for the army activation. And again, just to show you a little bit how does it go, they're going to perform their first movement here. They're going to take the units, and the second movement will be to the ancestral castle. Again, only you can go into your ancestral castle. And then the third movement will be to move to this village. So now, of course, we're going to have a combat with 3 neutral units. I do remind you that the purple player has the Bloodbath ability card, but they would like to keep a little bit of blood, so they're not going to execute it. This card we can already place in the discard pile. No combat cards, of course, are going to be played because that was the last card in the hand of the purple player. Let's roll the dice. We have here 3 and 2. Wow, that is a little bit aggressive for the purple player. So 2 damage the purple player did to the neutral units. 1 and 2 are going to go back to the supply. But 3 units the purple player will need to take out. They're going to take 1, 2, and 3. And now we have a retreat, so they can choose to which village this unit is going to retreat. I think they're going to move over here. Don't forget that we need to mark the control of this village by the purple player, and we're going to move on to the last action of the blue player. The blue player is going to play this card for the vampire activation, so I think they're going to go to this court that is called Venice, and this allows you to buy 1 card from the market for 2 gold or 2 blood less, and we're going to place it on the top of our deck. Now, usually when we're buying a card from the market, it will need to go to our discard pile, but here we have a special effect, so not so bad. It's important for me to say that you cannot go to a court where we already have a vampire of another player, but sometimes different options and different abilities will allow us to do it. Just for the fun of it, the blue player has a lot of gold. I think they're going to buy this card that is called the Grand Ball. Usually it's going to cost them 4, but we're going to have a reduction of 2. That means that 2 gold is going to be taken from the blue player back to the main supply. And now this card is simply going to go to the top of the deck of the blue player. Immediately after the blue player has bought this card, we need to replenish the market. Let's move on to the last turn of the green player. They have only a card that is called Gifts. That is, of course, a combat card, so no red frame over here, they will need to plate for the army activation. And I think what they would like to do is to recruit more units after the hit that they have taken from the blue player. So they're going to recruit 3 living units into their ancestral castle. With that, we have finished the action of the green player, and basically now that we're going to the purple player, they don't have any more cards that they can play, so they have to pass. The thing is, I remind you that the purple player was the first player. So if you were the first player, you cannot be a first player again in the next round. So what happens now? Of course, the blue player is going to pass, so we're going to consider that they were the first player to pass, and they're going to be the first player starting from the next phase. The green player is going to pass as well, which leads us to the end of the action phase, and we're going to move on to the market phase. So starting with the new first player, now the blue player will be able to buy one of the cards if they wish to. Of course, it's not mandatory. Let's just say for the fun of it that the blue player is going to buy this card. That card is going to cost them 2 blood. So 2 blood we're going to take from the personal supply of the blue player back into the general supply. And this card is going to be moved immediately to the discard pile of the blue player. And we remember that we need to replenish the market immediately. The blue player doesn't wish to buy more cards, so we're going to move on to the next player, that is now going to be the green player. The green player does have a lot of gold. I think they're going to buy 2 cards. Let's start by taking this card that is called the Sultan Support. That is going to cost them 3. So 1, 2, and 3, that is going to go to the supply. And also we're going to buy this combat card that is going to cost for them 2. These 2 cards, again, as I've said, are going to go into the discard pile of the green player. And I want to correct a small mistake that I did for the blue player, since they do have the ability card that is called Cunning. So in the market phase, they will be able to take 1 card with the combat symbol from the market and place it on top of their deck. So if you allow me, I apologize for that, to correct it, let's just take this combat card and place it on top of their deck. So I apologize for that. I hope that the correction was clear. Now that we're moving on to the purple player, they actually decide not to buy any card, which is okay. It's something that you can do. The next step, now that we finished with the market phase, is the harvest and upkeep. So harvest basically is the resources that you're going to take from the locales that you actually control. For your ancestral castle, which is something that you're going to control the entire game, each player is going to take 2 blood and also 2 gold. So with your permission, off camera, I'm going to give it to each one of the players. Then for each town that you control, you're going to take 1 gold. So that means 2 gold for the blue player, right? They have 1 and 2 towns that they control. 1 for the green and also 1 for the purple. And for each village that you control, you're going to receive 1 blood. Now, pay attention to something, that each locale that you control that has 1 or more, basically 1 or 2 unrest tokens, you will not be able to take resources from that locale. So if it's in a village like this, the blue player is not going to receive 1 blood from this village, but if it was in a town, then in that town, that player will not be able to take 1 gold. The next step in the harvest and upkeep is, as you guessed it, the upkeep. So for each living unit that you have, you need to pay 1 gold, and for each undead unit that you have, you will need to pay, you guessed it, 1 blood. If you don't have enough resources to pay for your army, you need to start removing units according to what you can pay. Now let's just take an example from the green player. The green player right now has 6 undead units, right? 3 in this army and 3 in this one. That means that they need to pay 6 blood. Fortunately for them, they have exactly that, but let's just imagine for the example that they would have had 5 blood. Of course, they need to give the blood back to the main supply, but for the unit that they cannot pay for, they need to simply take it and remove it back to the main supply. Finishing with the upkeep, now we're going to move on to the dawn phase, and we have something that is called unrest escalation, and we're going to see here something pretty cool. Now, in general, in each locale that we had, let's take another example over here. Every time that we have 1 unrest token, in this phase, we're going to add another unrest token. But here we have something pretty special. Since we have over here already 2 unrest, every time that we need to add a third unrest to a locale, we're going to have something that is called uprising. So that is exactly what we're going to see in this example. When this happens, the locale is going to go back being neutral, so the blue player does not control this anymore. And on top of that, the unrest is going to spread. So one unrest is going to go to this locale, that is a town, and one is going to move to this village. Of course, those are the 2 adjacent. If we would have had more locales that are adjacent to this village, the unrest would have spread to them as well. Now I'm going to take you a little bit back, and we said that unrest can never exist in a neutral locale, so that only means that here we're going to add 1 more neutral unit, and we're going to do the same thing with this village. Now that we have concluded that, we're going to move on to the second step in the dawn phase, that is the check and victory conditions. Since obviously nobody's controlled yet 5 towns, we're simply going to move on to the next turn. So now we're going to take this marker and move it to the next round over here, and that is going to liberate 1 spawn vampire for each player. Now that we have in our possession another vampire, when we're going to perform a vampire activation, we can activate all of our vampires. Just important to understand that each vampire will have to do something else. So again, just for the example, let's say that the blue player has played a card with the vampire activation. They can say, with this vampire, I'm going to go to a court, and this vampire spawn, they will not be able to go to one of the courts. They have to do one of the other possibilities. So either the hunt or to subdue a village. And with that, guys, basically we're going to have a second round, and again we're going to have exactly the same sequence that we've seen before. Just we need to remember that now each player is going to have the hand limit of 5. If your draw deck is empty, you're going to shuffle your discard pile and draw to complete to your hand limit. Now, before we're ending the video, I did promise you to talk about alliances as well, if we are in a game of 4 or more players. So in the diplomacy phase, we said that the first thing that we can do is to form an alliance. So we have here a small sequence. Let's just for the fun say that the blue player and the purple player decided to be allies. So first of all, what they're going to do is that each player is going to take a marker of the other player, and they're going to place it on their player board. This is going to signify to them and to the other players that right now they are in an alliance. On top of that, they will now need to exchange between them one of their ability cards. And on top of that, this ability card that they just exchanged is the ability card that they need to activate immediately. So they will not be able to choose. That is going to be the ability card that they're going to play in the evolving abilities step. Now, being allies is going to give you a few things. First of all, the players cannot attack each other, okay? Alliance can be broken only in this step, not during the round. Furthermore than that, allied armies will be able to travel through locales of their allies. Pay attention that they will not be able to stop there. And the last thing, that the allied vampires can support the combat of their allies. So if we have a combat in a specific locale between the blue player and the green player, the purple player's vampire, doesn't matter if it's the Lord or one of the spawns, will be able to support that allied army. Also important to add that once you are in an alliance, the victory condition is going to change, and as allies, you will need to gain control over 8 towns in order to win the game together. If by the time of the end of the game, again, nobody has managed to obtain that victory condition, then all the alliances will be broken, and then we're going to go back again to the normal victory condition. Now, if we already talking about support and alliances, something that maybe I should have mentioned is negotiations between the players. And yes, this is definitely something that you will be able to do. You can trade between yourselves any kind of resources that you would like. Pay attention, only resources, that means blood and gold, but not cards. And you can create any kind of deal that you would like between yourself. The thing is that if you made a deal that in that deal you exchange resources, that deal is binding. You cannot break it. Other than that, other promises that were made in the air, well, you know what is the rest. And that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I hope that you learned something new or saw something that you like. Take care, and I'll see you next time.